Portions of today's program were pre-recorded before a live woodland audience. Hello, my name's Norman Sisson, and I live in Madison, Mississippi, located just north of the capital city of Jackson. My wife and I have lived in this town where we are right now for for over 20 years. We've raised two beautiful children and have enjoyed calling home here. It has problems, but we still enjoy it. Today, I'll be conducting and narrating a nature walk and a touch of history down through the woods here. The woods here in Mississippi, this is the early part of May 9th, and we've got a lot of the foliage, the trees, bushes, and everything are starting to bloom, are coming into full bloom at this point. Some have already fruited, they've flowered and fruited, and others are still in their dormancy period and coming forward. But we'll be going over those today, as well as listening for some the sounds of the woods, the beauty, and just the joy of being in this beautiful woods. I'm going to turn this around now, and we'll start. If you looked on the map on the events page, you'll see that there is, that I've marked a spot on the end of a road as it disappears into the Ross Barnett Reservoir. We live on the Ross Barnett Reservoir. Ross Barnett is a 33,000 acre reservoir that was built and filled in 1965. And prior to that, this whole bottom land out here had roads all through it. And what we're standing in right now, get another view here. What we're standing in here is one of those roads that comes down through the woods on a ridge and runs directly out into the reservoir. Reservoir was built for recreational boating and fishing, as well as to supply a ready, reliable source of water for the city of Jackson. We're going to take a step out here to it. Just a quick background on what we're faced with today. You can see a nice day, beautiful. There's some light wispy clouds and such. Yesterday we had a cold front that came through, dumped a lot of rain. So we're going to have some muddy spots in the road and what I'm trying to negotiate with. But still, it's a beautiful day. It's about in the high 60s right now. So it's going to be a nice day for this. Now, if you look through the tree here, you can almost see it. There's a spot over there on that far bank that is called Lost Rabbit. That whole peninsula on that side over there is Lost Rabbit. The one that we're standing over here was called, ironically, Found Rabbit. And this bay between it was created when the water came up and filled in a creek that flowed right down through the center between these two points. The creek is called Haley Creek. And I ask that you remember that name because it will come into play a little later. If you'll look out here, I'm trying to show it as best as possible. If you look out there, you'll see a post stuck up. That post is a marker of where a road that came from Lost Rabbit and ran down through here. That post is actually where the bridge, as that road went over Haley Creek, and then it continues on out through the woods over on this side and comes back up onto the ground. And it was originally blacktopped, asphalt road down through there, all out across here. By the way this reservoir was built was by damming up the Pearl River. The dam in this is known as a lowland dam, a classic lowland dam, a classic lowland reservoir. And the dam that runs from one side to the other that's created this is 2.5 miles long. So there's not a lot of sharp topography, hard steepness, but when they dammed it up, it dammed up the Ross Barnett, dammed up the Pearl River upstream until it finally reached its level. By the way, if you recognize the name Pearl River, the Pearl River runs from up in Choctaw County, Mississippi, all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico, and it actually forms a portion of the border of South Mississippi. Years ago, Burners Without Borders was originally organized to help rebuild the library in a town called Pearlington, very small town, which is the last town on the Pearl River before it emerges out into the Gulf of Mexico. So Burning Man and the Pearl River have history. Let's go take a walk. A lot of the bushes and trees here I'm not familiar with intimately, but I will try to do what I can with what I know. This road is not maintained by anybody. There is gravel here originally, and in some of the upper stretches, which we'll go over a little later, there's actually blacktop, asphalt on it. As always, when you're walking in the woods in Mississippi, you always keep an eye on the ground because, yes, there are snakes out here. This is where they belong. This is where they live. And this is where I want them to stay, period. I have walked up on them before. And we just be careful about them, that's all. Give them their place. I am a strong proponent of peaceful coexistence. And when I find them, I let them go. I'm not the kind to automatically address them in an aggressive manner. Most of them are non-aggressive anyway. I'd say all of them up to this point in my life have been non-aggressive. They are defensive. We're walking along here, as you can see over here, you can see that this actually was a formed road. There's those roadside culverts or ditches on either side there to maintain flow of stormwater. We've got about a 10-mile-per-hour wind out of the northeast today. So we're going to have a little bit of a hiss in the wind in the top of the trees, but still. The only traffic that we see back on these roads anymore are either four-wheelers, ATCs, hikers, obviously, people on foot, and people on horseback. And we'll actually see some evidence of horse tracks back up the way here, and other horse evidence as well. My general impression of this area here is we have this beautiful canopy all the way down through here where the trees have closed in on the road. It's an easy open road. There are some mud holes and such as that that we'll have to negotiate. But this kind of intimacy, the woods closing in, not ominously, but in a way to try to actually maximize the space they have and to be able to reach the sunlight. As you can see, this is fairly dense woods through here. But you'll also notice, although you don't have it for scale, most of these woods are not old. You can see some of the oak trees. Occasionally you get a larger oak tree, but for the most part, these trees are maybe 12 to 14, 16 inches in diameter, and that's it. Here's a branch, a break off going this direction. This, I don't know who built this or why it was here or what have you. It's gravelled, so it's been maintained, but it was years ago. Let's go up this way. I don't remember who said it, but they said something along the line of, I came to a fork in the road and I took it. Geologically, this area has a lot of subsurface clay, which is known as Yazoo clay, that is very dense and in some places over 150 feet thick. We get a lot of it in our yard, in the little subdivision that we live in, which makes growing grass and gardens much more difficult because there's just not a lot of nutrition in clay. Stop and see out across here. In terms of forestry terms, this particular area is known as mixed hardwood, in which you will have oak trees, sycamore. Matter of fact, this oak tree right here is one known as a white oak. As you can see, good sized leaves, rounded on the end, and eventually at full growth, the tree will have a very light bark on it, called the white oak. Has very large acorns as well, which is a great food for deer and such. We also have several types of oak all out through here. There's the white oak, live oak, pin oak, a red oak. Down near the water, you'll get cypress, some cypress trees, which can tolerate being in water, fully immersed in water, by sending up sort of a snorkel, as it were, from its root system that extends above the water, that allows the roots to breathe. Those snorkels are called knees, cypress knees. And typically when you see cypress trees with a bunch of these projectiles coming up out of the water, that's what they are. Those are cypress knees, and it allows the tree to breathe in that hyper-aquatic area, like shallow sloughs and things like that. There's a certain limitation as to how deep it can go, but still they are very hardy, and they're sort of adapted, well adapted to the to water. We also have sycamore trees out here, some river birch, which will grow in clumps, and it's an absolutely beautiful tree, as well as the pine trees, which you'll have loblolly and longleaf. Now here, let's see what this is. Here's a feather that's laying in the ground here. This is probably, judging from the size of it here, you can see my hand, how big it is. This is probably off of one of the cranes, or an egret. It's much too large for a crow, and there's no barring or anything quite like that on it, which would place it for a turkey. So anyway, that's why you keep your eyes open. Okay, understand this. This area has not always been trees and bushes like it is. This area has also been home to family and homesteaders who have been here for many generations. And let's go visit some that used to be here. This is the ancestral burial place of the Haley family, H-A-L-E-Y, who lived here about 150 years ago and also died here. This cemetery, I don't believe it's on a national registry or anything like that, but in here we have two large monuments. This one being probably 9 feet tall. This one being approximately 7, and it looks like it was broken off at the top. It may have been broken off, and a portion of it laying over there. As you can see the portion that's stuck up over there. These were, go over this real quick. This was Burris Haley. Burris Haley. He was born in 1806 and died here locally in 1845. I'm sorry, 1843. And then there was also an unborn child, or another one, Alice, this is probably his wife, was also here, and I can't quite read her dates. I'm not going to get into it. But 1843, and this one is Amanda Haley and Luella Haley. Could be children. Amanda died in 1852, and Luella looks like 1853. So in that range right there, the Haley family lost a number of family members here altogether. Something I'd like to point out about this, the Haleys lived in here. Do you remember the name of the creek that formed that back over there? That was called Haley Creek. It was named after the family that lived here and probably had this place cleared at one time and ran cattle in here. I've seen other evidence out in the woods of old cattle watering ponds in the woods out there, and which indicates obviously that they had livestock on here. The other thing about the Haleys can be implied pretty clearly is they did rather well. Monuments like this are atypical, particularly for people who lived and worked out in the woods like this, or farmers or what have you. It's not just those two. We have several other headstones here. 1, 2, 3. There's a broken one over there. 4. I don't know what it is about vandals and graveyards. Here's another one here. This is Mary Haley. I can't quite read. One of the indications as to the apparent wealth of the Haleys, was that one of these headstones that I have seen in the past actually has an indication that these were carved, because there's names engraved on it and carved into it, as well as some other things up on the spires, that these actually were imported and created and brought down here from a marble company in Cincinnati, Ohio. So they had contact, they paid for these, and then they shipped them all the way down here. This is here on top of this beautiful knoll, one of the highest points out here in this area. You can see the woods drop away back over there. Anyway, this was the Haleys. They lived here, they died here, they prospered. The creek was named after them. And just an interesting thing. Also, if any one of you are familiar with an activity that's called geocaching, somewhere in this vicinity there is a geocache drop out here. And although I've been out here and I sort of knew this place and I haven't really tried to geocache it by lat and long per se, the whole idea behind geocaching is to put the caches in a place that is somewhat interesting and maybe historic. So this one stands on the geocache list as well. All right, let's take a walk back out. We got some more stuff to see. The bird out there enjoying his morning. Just take a listen here real quick. Speaking of birds and such, we'll go over the kind of a quick rundown of the fauna, the animals that we have out here. The largest animal we have out here is a white-tailed deer, and we may see some tracks on the way back out. We also have, in terms of birds, we've got cardinals. We get a lot of migratory birds through this area because we are associated with the Mississippi Flyway, which is the largest waterfowl flyway in the world, comes down through here. And in the wintertime, we get just about every type of wild duck that there is. Mallards and black ducks, and gadwalls and canvasbacks and redheads, and wood ducks are native and they stay here, but these others are migratory. Also, we get a lot of geese down through here, and a lot of the geese will come down here and decide that they like Ross Barnett and will stay. So there's that. If I hear the geese, I think I heard them a little earlier. If I hear them again, we'll stop and listen to them as they go by. We also have, in terms of birds, oops, that was a pileated woodpecker, probably fussing at me out there. You'll hear most of the woodpeckers in this area one of two types. They're either the pileated, which has the red crest of feathers and was sort of the design basis for woody woodpecker, as well as the red-headed woodpecker, which has a, there he is again. The red-headed woodpecker has a smooth red head. They're both rather large birds. Bodies are black and white with the red heads on them. We have those, as well as wild turkeys. I mentioned a wild turkey feather a while ago. There are wild turkeys out through this area as well. In terms of mammals, as I said, we've got the white-tailed deer. We have two types of foxes that live in this area. One is the red fox, and another one which is a gray fox. And the gray fox is kind of an anomaly in that even though he is a member of the Canis or dog family, he has retractable claws like a cat and can climb trees like a cat. Quite an unusual attribute. There was another one over here. That's another woodpecker, a different call. So we got the two foxes. We have bobcats, coyotes in this area. Coyotes have become more pervasive. We've got raccoons, possums, the armadillos, which used to be only southern, and now they've spread basically through the whole state. Kind of, most of those smaller mammals like that are just nothing. There's nothing to them. They live their lives and go on about their business and don't really cause any major harm. We got a lot of squirrels. Two types of squirrels here. One's the gray squirrel, the common gray squirrel, and then another one called a fox squirrel, which is 50% bigger and is red, rust color, almost like a fox, hence the name. Very big, and they've got sometimes over in the Mississippi Delta, which is over closer to the Mississippi River, there's another subspecies of fox squirrel that's solid black. And I believe there's also a town, and I don't remember the name of the town, maybe Columbia, Mississippi, south of here, that the park in the middle of town actually has, and has for several generations, had populations of white squirrels. And they only find them there. Don't know why, don't know. You can actually take white squirrel tours and go from town to town and pull up in there and just take your pictures of them. All right, we're back out on the main road again and coming across here. There's an old road there. I don't know where that's going. we won't be in. What you can see there are ruts created by the four-wheelers. I just saw a blue jay up ahead of us here. And what you get out here is there's a small branch running right here. Branch is what we call creeks or streams. And a draw, or a low area, running all the way back up in that direction. So we get a little bit of change in topography and such. Here somebody has brought an oven out here because they wanted to make a cake. Here's one of these mud holes, as you can see. It's got some tire traffic in it. It's very soft out there, particularly following that the rain. So we will skirt it. I'm wearing boots, but I avoid it when I can. If you'll listen out here, hear that? Never. One of the things that I absolutely love about springtime in the woods out here is are the woods are awakening, coming back to life, recreating itself in a new image, in a new manifestation. And if you know anything about trees and their function, every leaf that you see across there, when they start budding like this and the foliage really starts to get thick, every one of them is creating oxygen. And the woods out here become hyper loaded with oxygen. And it just makes breathing, get a big deep breath of this beautiful oxygen-rich air, and you know, and walking down shaded paths quietly and just enjoying it. I'm gonna go quiet for a little bit and let you just hear it. I told you before that one of the recreational uses of this area is horses. People on horseback can ride down through here. They actually can ride down the Natchez Trail, which is a hiking trail that runs down through the woods here. And yeah, there's evidence of one of our equine buddies. Just thought I'd show you that. You can see here, there's some of the hoof tracks of our horses. I remember years ago when we first moved here, we decided to get a dog. And we wound up buying an AKC registered standard poodle of champion bloodline. It's a wonderful dog. His name was Bo. Bo and I came walking down here one time, you know, and I'm proud of him. He's all cut up, has been groomed within an inch of his life. He looks absolutely gorgeous. And we came walking down through here, and I walked past one of those horse apple piles back there and didn't think anything of it, walked past it. And I went down a little bit and realized, you know, Bo wasn't right by me. And I turned around and looked, and Mr. AKC registered was rolling his newly manicured body entirely in that pile of horse crap. You know, he's still a dog. He was a great dog too. That bird, that call I recognize, that's a male cardinal, probably brilliantly plumed in bright, gorgeous scarlet. There he is again. By the way, in light of the pandemic and the steps necessary that everybody should be taking during this time, as outlined by CDC, I want to acknowledge that I am not wearing a mask, but I am maintaining social distancing of about 6 miles. So I think it qualifies. It's one of the beauties of coming out into the woods like this. This is pretty certain that this is a COVID-free zone out here. And certainly no transmission vectors. As we get back up here, we start to see evidence of the original blacktop. No, not right there. Here. This is actually asphalt. So this was asphalted, blacktopped, all the way down to that other one. I know that other one is because I've seen evidence of it out in the woods. Yeah, it looks like we have another group of hikers up today. Infrequent, but there they are. We'll check and see what they're up to. I seldom see other people.
How you doing?
Doing good. How about you?
Hey, can you get down to the water this way?
You bet you can.
Yeah.
Good. It goes straight down to it.
Great.
I never see people out here. Well, I revealed a little bit in that conversation as to where our next stop is. Come up here a little bit, and we're going to cut into the woods over here on the right. I'm going to show you something. Originally, in this area, there was a structure, I'm going to call it a structure, but a feature that was called the Natchez Trace. Originally, the Natchez Trace was formed by migration of bison in Mississippi, who would travel up in the northeast corner of the state and head up into the Cumberland Plateau in search of ground emergent salt. Very important to their life, to their health. And they did this so many times and over so many millennia that there was actually a trace or a trail. And it was originally called, it was just a trail created by buffalo. Eventually, the Indians, Native Americans, spotted saw this and started traveling up and down it. One end of it went up to the area around Nashville, Tennessee, and the other end of the trail, connecting, runs all the way down to Natchez, Mississippi, which is on the Mississippi River, on some high bluffs, major port city in the, there on the river. What I want to do is to show you a portion of the original Natchez Trace. Now, when the early settlers first started coming in here, Europeans, they would travel up and down this road because it was the only trail that there was available. So they would come through on horses, on foot, pulling wagons and such up and down. The Indians used it originally as a trading route. And you could see evidence of a lot of trading between the Indians by virtue of the fact that they would trade things like obsidian, volcanic glass, that black obsidian, which is not available down here, but that you can find in some of the Indian mounds and remains in Indian villages, are pieces of that obsidian, those obsidian arrowheads. Very valuable, very important. This right here, as you can see, you see the edges drop down. Now, discounting the four-wheeler trail, this was a portion of the original Natchez Trace. As you can see, the surrounding area was much higher, but through centuries and centuries of foot traffic, it has worn down into what is here right now. Major important trail right here. And we're only looking at a very small portion of it. The Natchez Trace runs 440 miles altogether, from Nashville all the way up to Natchez, or all the way down to Natchez. But it wasn't a straight line, as I mentioned them before. It sort of runs back and forth, up and down ridges, takes the path of least resistance. Okay, a little side trip there. I had to clear out some memory in my phone because I had just filled it. Anyway, we're just now coming away from the old Natchez Trace, the original Natchez Trace, as run by bison, Native Americans, as well as Europeans who later came in as settlers. You can see some of it on that side over there, that side of the road, but not as prominently as it was here on the right side. So, years after that, I believe the Natchez Daughters of the American Revolution, DAR, back around the end of the 1800s, first part of the 1900s, decided that they would like to sponsor or find a sponsor of someone who would handle the classification of honoring and commemorating the Natchez Trace. Now, portions of the trace, although it was not one contiguous run from Nashville to Natchez, it was several broken parts and all together. And through a lot of politicking and politicians getting on board and things like that, eventually, around 1920, the construction began on the Natchez Trace Parkway, designated as a parkway, and maintained by the U.S. Department of the Interior. It became literally a national park. The Natchez Trace Parkway runs, as I've said here before, from Nashville, Tennessee, all the way down to Natchez for a span of almost 444 miles, making it our nation's longest national park. It is a well-maintained and well-constructed parkway. Two-lane traffic, as you can hear right here. As you can hear right there, it's used by motorcyclists, bikers, bicyclists, some hikers on the trails, and a lot of car traffic. The one thing you won't find on it is commercial traffic, because it is a national park.